Welcome, one and all, to Project Geekology, episode 99. And it's a very special episode because it's not just me, Dakota, today. I am joined by my co-host,
Anthony. Yes, no mini-sode today. I am back. I was on vacation, but you had a nice little mini-sode by Dakota. He did some Q&As about his timelines. So if you want some questions answered, or I mean, he already asked those questions and answered them. But if there's some that you might have had that syncs up with somebody else that he answered, well, go listen to that.
Yep. I had a lot of fun doing that minisode. I asked on Twitter, if you have any questions about, my timeline obsessions, basically. And the fact that I've created, eight or nine different timelines for different franchises at this point. So I went through kind of the history of my timeline progress on YouTube and on blog sites and stuff, and I got maybe 10 or so questions, maybe 10 to 15 questions from people asking me about different stuff from my MCU timeline to like my D&D timeline and all that, and it was really fun. I had a really fun time working on that video, or not that video, that podcast. And it's available now. So if you want to check it out, it is the last thing that we produced right before this episode. But today we are going far, far away because we have to, attend the, what is it? It was like a betrothal party or something.
Right, like
Banquet.
it was like the celebration of Fiona and quote unquote Shrek's marriage. But, we know that there's a whole mess that happens during that movie.
Yeah, so we're gonna get into all of that. I didn't. Sorry, I for some reason I couldn't come up with like the proper terminology because it's not. I'm just so not royal. I don't have these major banquets that I have to attend very often. But it was very pleasant being able to attend this one in Shrek 2. So yeah, we're gonna be covering Shrek 2 today. We covered the first Shrek on our last proper episode 98, and yeah, we have a lot to talk about because Anthony, you've been gone for over a week at this point, or at least it's been over 2 weeks since we talked last. What have you been up to, my friend?
Well, you know that I had been up to kind of quite a bit. So the week that you released that mini-sode, I was actually on vacation. I was up in Tennessee visiting family and kind of hanging out and getting away from the craziness of South Florida, which was really nice. I mean, since then, not a couple days ago, I went to a concert. It was like my first concert in a couple years, actually. Oh no, actually more than a couple years. Like, I don't think I had been to a concert in like maybe 5 or more years, dude.
Dude, I hear you, and it's so weird because you used to live with me for like 6 months in New York, and we went to concerts almost like every weekend. Like that was our thing. So the fact that like I'm in the same boat where I haven't been to a concert in forever. So tell me about this concert that you went to. I know you sent me videos already, but let's tell our lovely listeners what you attended.
So I know that I I know that group. You might not be like the biggest fan of them, but I went to go see Babymetal, and Babymetal's there. It's an interesting group. It's a mismatch of metal, rock music, and J-pop, and it is really interesting to see that, especially live, because you're hearing this like heavy metal music, but then there's these three girls and they're dancing like choreographed dances, and then like that music kind of like moves from like heavy metal to some like J-pop influence, and then the way that it kind of like flows in and out of itself is actually very interesting. I ended up I actually wanted to go see them, but because I was on vacation, I really wasn't able to swing it because I was like, okay, I spent this money on vacation, and I got reached out by a friend while I was on vacation, like, hey, did you end up getting those tickets? And I was like, no, I didn't end up getting those tickets because, what I just said, I was like on vacation, and like, it's just it just wasn't smart
You were
financially.
stretched thin at that point.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And so they're like, oh, okay, well, that's fine because, I have an extra ticket. And
Yeah. Oh, they hooked you up.
they hooked me up. And so I ended up being able to go see them. And dude, I had a really good time. I mean, dude, I sent you some videos. Like, it looked like fun, right? And dude,
Yeah.
there was
No,
a
it
lot of
was.
people there. You saw that that thing
That
was
was like a
packed.
big stadium. That was like a big concert, dude.
It really
Um,
was. It was like pretty much like packed out. Like, I mean, I think there was some seats here and there that weren't sold, but if you go to look at like the rest of their shows, a lot of them are like sold out.
wow. I mean, it's really impressive. And I do think, even though it may not be, something I will like go out of my way to like listen to, like I don't generally listen to J-pop, and I don't generally listen to metal or heavy metal, whatever it is. But the fact that it's like a combined genre, and they've been around for a couple decades at this point, so like I think that it's a cool blend, and I'm sure it must have been a really cool concert. So that's awesome. How was Tennessee?
Tennessee, man, it was a really great time. I wish it was a little cooler. It was still kind of teetering on like, cool evenings and cool mornings, but like the day would kind of shoot up to like maybe the 70s. But the leaves were like finally starting to change, so I was able to catch that.
Awesome. Yeah, that's cool. Have you been up to anything else recently, or not really?
No, like that's really like the biggest things that's really like the biggest things that like I had been up to like up until this point. How about you? I know that you did your mini-sode, but like what else have you been working on?
So creatively, I have been kind of at a standstill in terms of like what I'm working on. So that mini-sode was a good kind of push for me to just do something fun for myself.
Sweet.
So that was a good opportunity for me, and just a good opportunity to get in touch with my audience and bring them over to Project Geekology, because I don't think that necessarily overlaps too often. So it was a good opportunity to cross promote a little bit. So that was fun. There was something that I brought up on the podcast that I'm not sure that I've ever spoken to you about. I'm going to be moving within the next couple months. Did
I
I
remember
mention
you
that?
te- I remember you telling me that like you're looking to move within like the next like couple, or not next couple months, but that you were like in the works of like eventually moving.
Yeah.
Um
So
I mean, like, I didn't know if you want to like say it on the podcast. I mean, we could cut it out, but like, I know that you had said something about Jin's parents, and
yeah. So my wife, my in-laws, they've been building a two-story garage on their property for a very long time, and it's finally built. And instead of having it be a garage, they're turning it into a little mini home on their property. So we're putting a lot of money into fixing that up, getting the appliances up and ready. And I've been going over there maybe like once or twice a week just to do a little work on electrical lighting. We put in like cabinets in the kitchen.
how convenient it is to know to have that skill for like personal use.
It is, yeah. I'm an electrician. Actually, speaking of which, I did do something like work wise that has been like eating away at me for like the past couple months. Is I've completed my OSHA 30, which is
I remember you talking about that.
it's something that was just it's extremely boring, and it's extremely time consuming. You need to spend 30 hours of your time over the course of 180 days to like you get a maximum of 180 days to like complete it, but
Yeah,
you
that
can
dude.
do a total of like 7.5 hours per day. But like I could maybe do like 1 or 2 hours before I just kill myself. Like it was so I shouldn't say that, but it was so mind numbingly dull.
It
I
so
I
that's
finally
like a
finished it.
that's like a semester in college right there. Like, like 30 to 40 hours of like coursework.
Yeah.
So you practically did, like a college semester.
Yes, and there's
So
there's like a monetary like incentive to like When I get my next raise, it'll be a little bumped up just because I have that certification under my belt. So
Okay, so it was worth
nice.
it at least.
Yes, no,
Yeah.
it will pay for itself in the end, but it was just the worst,
painful.
Yeah. And it's partially like why I've been so like I've been in a creative rut. Just because I know in the back of my head that I should be doing that and not whatever else I want to do. So
yeah, we all do that. We all have that like dilemma, whether it's like stuff like that or even like personal growth. You know, I do sometimes I would rather do stuff like this or, you know, watch something or play video games or go hang out somewhere rather than like do the things that I'm supposed to do. So I completely know where you're coming from, and I know that a lot of our listeners probably have had that similar issue.
Yeah, it's definitely, something that I don't want to do it again. I think I have to do it every 5 or 10 years or something like that. So
well, at least you get like another like few years to go or more.
Exactly. So I've been playing a little bit of video games.
Oh,
it's not something that I always bring up, but yesterday, Jen and I came home and we were like, what video games do we have? Like, what can we play right now? And I was just like, I've been wanting to replay Kingdom Hearts. And she's just like, oh, let's do it. So, we were making our way through Destiny Islands yesterday. And it was just fun. It's just nostalgia, and it's super nostalgic for me because I know the beginning of the first Kingdom Hearts game by heart.
Yeah.
To the point
same.
where like I'm letting her play it because she's only played through part of the game one time. So she's just like, where can I find a rope? I'm like, oh, that's going to be over where Tidus is flipping around over there. Where can I find a clock? Oh, it's in this treehouse over here. So that was fun. It was a good time to play that again. And it's funny, dude. I know in the cutscenes, like I can like hear the words that the characters are going to say before they say it in my head, and sometimes I'll like say it aloud and my wife just looks at me like, are you crazy? How do you know this? But
I know,
so
yeah, I think I've played the
fun.
beginning of that first one like 1,000 times.
Yeah, something about the beginning, like I think most of the people playing it like are super fond of. What else? I've been playing some mobile games. I don't know if you probably have grabbed it already. Pokemon TCG Pocket.
Oh, absolutely. 100. I got it. It was supposed to come out on the 30th, and I think it dropped for me at least on the 29th. And I downloaded it. I've honestly been keeping an eye on that game for a while because I was like, you know what, that looks really interesting, and like I really like card collecting. Especially when it comes to like Pokemon, that's like one of the biggest things that you and I like grew up with was collecting Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh. So this kind of like scratches that itch, but I've also kind of learned how to play the game a little bit. And, because like with Pokemon, I actually never really played it. I only collected it. Yu-Gi-Oh was the one that I actually kind of learned to play.
Right, Yu-Gi-Oh for us was the game that we played most. Speaking of Pokemon TCG, I popped open a pack. It's there's some interesting cards in here. The first card is a holographic Nidoking. It's a reverse holo, but all right, let's see.
I really want to get that
Nidoran.
There's this really cool like Mewtwo.
I just got like a really cool Nidoking. Yeah, that's cool.
Not Dakota and I geeking over Pokemon TCG Pocket, but I mean like for good reason because it is like pretty fun. It's some like really cool like EX cards.
Nice.
And like some of these like really cool like art ones like you can't see mine. I don't know why.
For some reason, yeah. It's all right. But it's been fun. I know some people are like super caught up in it and they're having a really great time with it. I haven't gotten hooked on it yet. I want to, and it feels like something that I should be hooked on.
The thing I like about it is that it's one of those games that you don't have to be like active and like playing it when you are playing it. Like you can kind of like just think passively unless like maybe you're battling, but like when you're like kind of opening packs and then looking through your cards and even setting up decks, you could set up binders, which is really cool. I really like enjoy that aspect.
Another game that I picked up for mobile has apparently been out for about 2 years at this point. It's called The Tower.
The
and
tower?
it's like an idle
Oh,
tower defense game that it's just like incrementally like you have infinite upgrades that you can make and just keep going further and further. And I've been hooked on it for the past couple of weeks, like 2 weeks now. It's super impressive, just the amount of thought that goes into it, and like the amount of upgrades that you can do.
that's cool.
Like yeah, it's I'm there's not really much to say. I just, something to waste my time and money on, basically. All right. Shall we jump into the topic at hand?
Yes, yes. Sorry, y'all, for us just like kind of babbling. It
We
had been a
haven't
couple
we
of
haven't
weeks,
talked.
yeah,
Yeah.
since we had like talked in person. I mean, we text between each other, but like actually talking, it's been a couple weeks. So yeah, yeah. Let's hop into Shrek. Let's go far, far away. We're moving away from the swamp.
So this appears to take place shortly after the first movie, because we have Shrek and Fiona we begin the film, just kind of like experiencing some of the good times that they're having on their honeymoon, and then they
Right.
return home from their honeymoon, and Donkey's there all alone,
Still
and
there.
sad, yeah, and just a total nuisance. So that was fun. But we are also introduced to a new character in Prince Charming really early on. And it actually starts to click together. If you remember from the first movie, the fable says that Prince Charming was going to grab her from the clutches of the dragon in her tower.
Yeah.
And
And
the wording there is very specific. It
it's
says Prince Charming, but it could
it's
just be anyone,
it's so funny because he narrates like as he does it.
Yes, that was great. That was good. Yeah. So, what are your first thoughts going into this movie? You probably haven't seen it in a long time. I know I haven't seen it in a long time.
Yeah, it had been a while, but like my first thoughts were, it was almost like not much time had passed. Like I felt like a kid watching this again, and I was excited because I was anticipating because I do remember huge chunks of these or huge chunks of the first and the second one at least. I think I saw the third one like a long time ago, and it was like largely forgettable to me. But the first and the second one, those are like, I could remember those, like for the most part.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so yeah,
I think
like
I've only seen Shrek the Third once,
yeah.
and it was in theaters, and then I never watched the fourth movie. So maybe that's something that we can tackle on the podcast at some point.
So I think that like coming into this, I was pretty excited because like I knew like what was what we were gonna get, and I just felt like I just felt like I was laughing almost nonstop through this movie.
It's just really clever, and I want to like talk a little bit about like how they managed to create such a intelligent and self-referential world that kind of works in and of itself. Like if you don't think about it too hard, this world makes total sense as like a kid.
Yeah.
So that's something that I really appreciate. And the fact that you take all these fairy tales, you take all these stories, and then you just throw them and lump them into together, and then you just throw an ogre into the mix, and that's basically what this world revolves around. It's just so cool, and
Right.
you don't really get that anywhere else.
And it's not like a classic ogre like from like the tales of old, like this big lumbering creature that eats people. It's a creature that is so used to being alone because like he was never accepted, and like that's why he was always angry, and that's why he didn't really care to be around others. And Fiona coming into his life really like opened that up. And so this movie is him stepping out of his comfort zone even more.
What is cool about this is that you don't consider who Fiona's parents are or why she was in the tower in the first movie.
Right.
But they give that whole backstory of like, as a kid, she had this curse put on her. We don't really understand how she got the curse, or like, if that was like an intentional thing of the fairy godmother that we learn later on is evil. But she has a curse. She gets sent to a castle, and the only way that the fairy godmother said that the curse could be lifted is if her own son, Prince Charming, comes and saves the day.
Yeah.
So I thought it was very clever when, we have Prince Charming riding into the tower and he just sees an empty bed. Oh, he doesn't see an empty bed. He sees the big bad wolf sleeping in the bed. I thought that was hilarious.
I like how he's like, Fiona. He's like, no.
Instead of Sports Illustrated, he's reading a magazine called Pork Illustrated. Oh god, it was so funny,
bro. Yeah, just the there's like so many small details like that were different like real life things that were referenced throughout this movie.
What did you think about Fiona's parents and their introduction, and like how are we supposed to take them moving forward before they even meet Shrek? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Right. So you can tell that the father is a little stuck up. The mom is definitely seems a bit sweeter and a little bit more like accepting, but yeah, like you can tell like they're a little stuck up, maybe a bit pretentious, but it is interesting to see like how that how when Shrek and Fiona kind of come across them, like how that's gonna unfold. I mean, obviously we know, but like you can tell like it's just gonna be a mess.
What's so weird is that they know that Fiona and Shrek are married, but they don't seem to understand or know that they're ogres at this point. Even though they know to send they know to send the invitation to a swamp. Like it's just kind of backwards logic if you think about it. Like, how did they know where they lived? How did they know that they were even married without knowing the details?
So I guess like in a way, like you're supposed to have like that childlike suspension of like disbelief.
You have to, yeah.
So like you can assume that like they maybe sent out this announcement party to like go find out wherever they were, and then like kind of I guess like move on from there, like like given the invitation, the announcement. But then like you would think like, okay, at that point the people that saw them would be like, okay, well you're in for a surprise when they get here.
A big surprise, yeah. I love the trek over to the kingdom of Far Far Away, and I like the notion of Far Far Away, because when we think of that, we think of Star Wars. Like that's probably the first thing most people think of, is a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah.
And in its own way, this is kind of like another galaxy far, far away, because for Shrek, he is from a swamp. He's going to essentially Hollywood, Hollywood for fairy tale creatures. And it's everything in it is so clever, because, even like having the far, far away, like Hollywood sign, and then like you have celebrity tours, but for like fairy tale creatures and princesses. Like there was Cinderella's castle over there. There was a whole bunch of that stuff, and it was just clever is the word that I'm probably going to use most in this episode, just because every time the scene would change, I'm like, oh, that was really good, that was really clever, or whatever, So yeah, that's
no, yeah, I agree.
What do you think about Donkey showing up? Because he currently has a wife at home. He's also married.
I know, which is,
or presumably married. We just assume.
Yeah. Which is like, it's interesting, because like you don't really get that realization until like, the end of the movie. But it would have been weird if Donkey was not there, because it would have been like, okay, you had Shrek and Fiona, but then like, where's Donkey at?
You need a really hardcore for a kids movie. You need a really hardcore character to laugh at.
Yeah, exactly.
You need your comedic relief, especially in this movie when there's so many tense scenes. You know what I was thinking,
and I didn't think about it so much so in the first movie, but I thought it hit me in this movie. But there's a lot of things that, or no, there's a couple things that Mike Myers does with Shrek that he like pulled out of Austin Powers. Like that
What do
like
you mean?
little like that joke. He'll make these like little like, you know, jokes or like innuendos, and then he'll like laugh at it him like self.
Yeah, he's like,
And so and so like and so
I
Austin
didn't think about
Powers
that.
did that. He would do that. He'd be like,
Yeah.
yeah, he would make like a little gag and then be like, you know, like do the little laugh. And so Shrek did that out, and I was like, oh my gosh, like he's taking like influences from other things, which makes sense for this movie because this movie is all about being influenced by other things but making fun of it.
Oh yeah, 100%. There's so many influences within this movie, and let's talk about a little bit of it because in the first movie there was the influence of the Matrix in that one scene, like specifically when Fiona is fighting. You know, they had
Yeah,
that like Matrix camera turn. They had a bunch of that in this movie where there was a scene where it was like Mission Impossible. You
yeah,
know, we had Pinocchio like
that scene was
like
hilarious.
gliding down. There's so many hilarious scenes. What else? There
They,
was the One Ring.
yes,
There was on their honeymoon
yes,
thing. They had that, you know, like the classic scene of like the ring flying onto Frodo's finger. It was Fiona's finger, obviously. I thought
and
that
it
was
was a wedding
hilarious.
ring rather than like the one ring, but then like it
Yes.
also like but then you also saw like the red lettering on it.
Yeah. What did it say? Like "I love you" or something
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. Yeah. I can't remember. I know that there was other stuff. I just off the top of my head, I cannot think about it right now. But I just remember it was very like early 2000s references that, you know, it's something.
100%, yeah.
It's all stuff that you and I grew up with, and it was just like, oh, remember that? Oh, I remember that. Yeah, so that was cool. Sorry, it was like a weird noise behind me. Yeah, speaking about Donkey, we know that presumably they're like he and Dragon are still together, or they're having a rough patch or something in the beginning because that's why he's at the swamp in the first place. And he says something along the lines of like she's very moody right now and I don't know why and I don't want to be around her basically. And that's the reason he's like hanging out with Shrek and Fiona at this point. And then eventually goes on their journey to far, far away. And there's that long scene of "Are we there yet? Are we there?"
Yeah, yeah. And then that, oh my gosh, dude. There's like so many like good scenes in this movie. So it has like the classic characters from like the first one, like, you know, Pinocchio and the pigs and Gingerbread Man. Like they were all in the first one. They had a little bit more of an active role in this one, especially like towards the end. But then like we get an awesome, and I mean awesome, addition to this movie in Puss in Boots.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the giant gingerbread man.
Oh no, 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 no. I mean that's like
That
later
was
on, but
awesome.
dude,
That was awesome. But yes, Puss in Boots.
Puss
Oh,
in Boots,
fantastic.
dude, Puss in Boots had me dying the entire time,
Uh,
man.
the
And
it's
yeah,
a
dude,
perfect
voiced
character.
by Antonio Banderas, which
Antonio Banderas, he did so good, dude. Like every single line that he did was just this is exactly how a cat would say that, you know, like
I
but
like
the
it.
best scene by far, the best scene by far is when like they're breaking into far far away, Donkey, Shrek and Puss in Boots, and there's like a it's like a cop show that's happening live on TV,
Yes, yes.
and they pull out catnip from from Puss in Boots like belt, and he goes, "That's not mine, man."
Yeah, I know he like the knight sniffs and he's like catnip. Dude, that scene was so funny. And then like, what about the scene like after Shrek goes through like this transformation? He takes this potion. He's trying to make Fiona happy, and he takes this potion that makes him human and turns her back into human, and then it turns Donkey into a horse rather than, you know, a donkey.
Mhm.
And it's so funny like when they go back and like Fiona and Shrek, they keep missing each other, but she ends up outside, and so like she meets Puss in Boots and Donkey, and like she like looks up at Puss in Boots, and like Puss in Boots is like, you know, he's cleaning himself like very much so like a cat, and she's like, Shrek, and she's like, for you, baby, I could be anybody or something like that.
Oh, and then Shrek's inside, you know, just trapped. Oh, it's so good.
Dude, I'm gonna be honest, I think from that point on, like Puss in Boots was like my favorite character like in the Shrek universe.
and it turns out he's got the best movie in the Shrek universe. Did you ever see the new Puss in Boots movie, Last Wish?
Dude, so good.
It was
It was
incredible.
so good.
To,
It
to
had
the
no
point
right being
where,
that good.
no, because it's, you know, the Shrek movies are great. They're good fun.
Yes.
But they're not like, they're good kids movies, you know? They're not like
Right.
good movies. If you understand my meaning, like, you don't feel like a profound sense of, you know, like, wow, I just watched a piece of art when you watch a Shrek movie.
Right. Like
That's what I got with the Last Wish.
exactly, like the Shrek movies are like good fun for like the kids and adults. But the Last
excellent
Wish,
popcorn flick. Excellent popcorn flick.
exactly, but the Last Wish was like insane, and it was like teaching like lessons for like both kids and adults. I'm like, dude, what is happening right now? I said, why is this so good? My coworker had they had seen it, and they're like, you have to go see it. It's so good. I ended up going. I think it was on Netflix for a little while, and I decided to watch it. I'm like, dude, what? And it was awesome because like Puss in Boots is like my favorite character in the Shrek universe, and the fact that like he had gotten such a solid like last movie. Come on.
Yeah. They're making a Shrek 5. I'm hoping that Puss in Boots comes back into that. I'm assuming he will, considering.
Yeah, he became like he became a main character, even though Donkey says that there's only room for one annoying talking animal.
I disagree with Donkey there. I'm really happy. One of my favorite scenes is that initial dinner or luncheon setting with Shrek, Fiona, the parents, and Donkey.
Oh yeah.
And it's just a stare down between Fiona's father and Shrek. Obviously, Fiona's father does not think that Shrek is good enough for his baby girl. And Shrek obviously is feeling extremely discriminated against. And it's almost like a Meet the Fockers
Oh yes.
setting.
And
I don't know if that was intentional, but
that
it
might
had
have
that vibe.
that might have been an influence of that movie.
Yeah, I think so, because the character types, like the mother in Meet the Fockers, if I remember correctly, was much more open to
Yes.
you know, that relationship. And it's the same in this movie, you know, with Shrek and Fiona, where the father is the real antagonist and is you know, trying to break them up, or, you know, show the daughter that the husband that you know, the daughter chose isn't the person that they should be with, you know? So I thought that was a really interesting dynamic. But there's the scene where they're all yelling at each other. Like they're all yelling each other's name, and then Donkey's just like, Donkey!
Oh yeah. Oh,
Like he just says his
they're
own name.
There's like Shrek, Fiona, you know, that kind of thing, and then
Yeah.
like Donkey just like yells out his name. Yeah.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's so good. That whole scene is fantastic.
So this movie, you know, let's talk a little bit about like the casting, because we talked about like how crazy the casting was for this movie, or for the first movie, and then so this one opens up like a lot more. Like we already talked about Antonio Banderas, which, you know, he had at that point he had done like the Zorro movies, so like people knew who he was. And then we have John Cleese that plays King Harold, Julie Andrews that plays Queen Lillian. There's so many. There was also, was it Larry King like plays a character in there. There's a lot of they kind of like
it's a massive cast.
a lot of it is like, you know, kind of cameos like Joan Rivers. But
Yes, Joan Rivers has
and she
fantastic.
and she was her. Like it was like a cartoon version of her.
Wait a minute, Larry King was playing the ugly stepsister?
Yeah. Isn't that wild?
I did not get that at all. That's hilarious. Oh man, yeah, I'm looking at the cast list too now. There's a lot of people I don't recognize, but the people I do recognize are just like, whoa, whoa, they're in this, whoa. So yeah, they again, fantastic cast. Apparently, the big bad wolf in this universe is called Wolf W. Wolf. I would have never guessed that.
That's hilarious. So yeah, the casting just like really expands a lot in this one, because it was mostly just like the three of them in the first movie, with the occasional like person like thrown in. So like yeah, they I guess they wanted to like open up the casting. And then so this one, I know that you're talking about like how the backgrounds in the first one are a little bit more like on the bland side, whereas this one they added like so much more. It is, I mean, it's vibrant, but you can tell that like the animation is they've like tuned up the animation in the second one.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, this movie is 20 years old, and to me it was still solid. Like, sure, like the animation models are like very like early 2000s, but they still look very solid. Like, they don't look like a 3D animation model from like the 90s.
So, have you ever heard of Shrek's Law?
I have not. Elaborate.
So, yeah, Shrek's Law is I'm reading the AI overview over on Google, but it's something that I was planning to bring up in this video, and it's a good thing that you mentioned the idea of like bigger backgrounds, much more is being rendered at the same time, and it just seems like a more populated world,
right?
In the second movie. So Shrek's Law is a term used to describe the trend of increasing CPU hours required to produce each Shrek film. The law states that the CPU hours needed to produce a Shrek sequel will double compared to the previous film. So here are some examples. In Shrek from 2001, it required approximately 5 million CPU render hours. Shrek 2 required over 10 million hours of CPU rendering. Shrek the Third required 20 million, and Shrek Forever After actually required 50 million CPU render hours. And it's amazing because as technology increases, that doesn't necessarily cut down on the amount of time that rendering is actually going to take, and it actually seems to be the opposite trend, where like you have to use way more computing power to render all of these movies. And a lot of these movies, they came down to like the line, like if I remember correctly, one of the Shrek movies wasn't finished rendering until like the day before it was ready to go out to theaters.
Oh, that's wild.
Like, it just takes so much rendering power to create these movies. I always found that was really fascinating.
I wonder how many. I wonder what The Last Wish is at.
Yeah, I wonder if I can look that up. Puss in Boots, The Last Wish, render, CPU render hours. Apparently, the original Puss in Boots movie required 60 million render hours. I do not see that there's been any information released about the new Puss in Boots movie. But back in 2011, 60 million render hours, that's insane. Yeah, no, it's nuts. And it's a trend that so Shrek Forever After, 50 million CPU render hours in 2010. In 2011, the Puss in Boots movie came out, the first Puss in Boots, not Last Wish, and that was 60 million. So I hope that trend isn't exponential, because that is just like a bad that's bad news for like movies down the line. But yeah, I guess we'll have to see about that. Maybe
well, I mean, we see how long it takes for a movie like The Incredibles to be made. And like in that time between like the first and the second one, we had like a handful of like Shrek movies, and then so in the time before, I mean, in the time between the second one and then like the third one, where where we've had some Shrek stuff. There's The Last Wish. We're probably gonna be getting Shrek 5. Is it Shrek 5?
Yeah.
In 2026. So
yeah, I think it's Shrek 5. Let me look it up. Shrek 5 release date. Yeah, it's scheduled for July 1st of 2026, so summer 2026.
Right. So we'll be getting that before we get we'll be getting that before we get Incredibles 3 and probably GTA 6. That's
God.
That's a little bit of a joke that I wanted to throw in there, cuz that's like, like GTA 6 is like I guess it's like a unit of like measuring time, like, oh, we got this before GTA 6, that kind of thing.
GTA is like the more popular of that, but for me it's Elder Scrolls, because we've been waiting for Elder Scrolls 6 for over a decade at this point.
So
it's just been nebulously announced.
Right. Like they had announced it, and I think that announcement was really just to like bide them time, and really at that point they probably hadn't even started that project.
It was just an announcement like that they planned on doing it.
Yeah.
That's like me when I like tease timeline projects. It's like I haven't really started, but
Well, like at least you say like this is in the works. Like usually like in the works for you is that like you're planning to do it, and there's a lot that goes into it before you actually like sit in front of a camera.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of studying and writing and collecting data before any of like the actual stuff is culminated on camera or like.
Exactly.
So, yep. No, I agree. Maybe so. Let's go back to Shrek 2. I don't know why we deviated.
Yes. Rabbit trail.
But let's talk about the fairy godmother.
Yes, I wanted to actually talk about her and like how she goes from like a seemingly good character to being the villain of this film.
Which is fascinating because in most like fairy tale media, you think of the fairy godmother as this almost like Deus Ex Machina character that will help the protagonist see their true potential. And in some ways, she is showing people their true potential, but not the way that they handle it in this movie is almost like cosmetic. Like she's almost like a plastic surgeon in this universe. Like she just wants to make everyone feel good instead of actually attaining their true potential.
Right.
As is the norm in fairy tale movies and stuff. So
fairy tale
I
movies
that
and like that was like very Hollywood also, which is like kind of what the setting is in.
Right, yeah. So you think of like Cinderella, the fairy godmother there is,
right.
Always trying to prop up Cinderella to show that she's not just this stepsister that cleans all day. She can actually be a princess, With the fairy godmother of this movie, it's all a business. It's all part of this brand that she's creating, or that she has created, to mass produce spells and potions that are fleeting and momentary in terms of like the satisfaction of the person imbibing it.
Right. And this is where Shrek gets that one potion that turns him and Fiona into humans and Donkey into a horse.
Yeah. So what did you think of like Shrek's human form? Like he became this like, he was still a large dude, but he kind of became like a hunk, I guess. Hunk would be the term.
Yeah, that was so funny. I do find it funny that they decided to go with like the opposite form of him being some like really attractive, like kind of, I mean like he had muscles, he was big. And so like that's like I honestly pictured that like that's what like Shrek is, like very strong, And so if he wasn't fat, he would probably be very muscular. So like that was like pretty much like what he would look like. But then like yeah, they like made him a human. I mean, it was interesting, and like I don't know. To me, it didn't feel weird. I imagine like I think that they like reimagined him as a human like pretty well.
And it still looked like Shrek. Like it had the
Exactly.
muscular or the physical features of his face and his body build and everything like that. Even Donkey still had Donkey's face somehow, just superimposed onto a horse.
Yeah.
One thing that, like with Donkey's transformation, when he eventually transforms back from a horse into a donkey, I never realized how different horses' tails were to donkey tails. Like that was something that was like really jarring for me, because horse tails are just covered in hair, so you don't really see the length of the tail. It just looks like a big whip of hair.
Right.
But donkey tails are very long with a little poof of hair at the
Yeah.
tail
Yeah.
end.
Yeah.
So when they transitioned in that, I was just like, I never realized how different horses are to donkeys. But you know, they're in the same family of animals. But yeah, I thought that was cool. You learn something new every day, guys.
Yeah. No. That definitely was an interesting, and like I think that like they do so well in the fact like how they were able to do that animation of transformation, especially with the technology that they had back then, and that it wasn't some hand drawn animation, which like hand drawn animation, it has its own issues, but like you can kind of hand draw that animation, whereas this you're trying to like use as much as you can. There's a very limited amount of computing power that you have. So the fact that like a lot of the stuff that they did looked like very well, it didn't look choppy. It didn't look, how sometimes for the sake of computing animation, there's a little bit of a frame drop.
Yeah.
You don't see that as much. I think there was a couple times, but not as much.
So it's interesting that you bring that up, and it's interesting also because of the content of like what is being explored in this. So you're talking about the transformation scenes, and yeah, they are pretty spectacular, especially because it's CG, like it's CG rendering. But you also mentioned 2D and its limitations, and I thought that that was an interesting choice because it reminded me of another transformation, that being Cinderella, who we've brought up a couple times at this point. When Cinderella transforms from her rags into a ball gown, it's a very beautiful 2D animation, and it's said to be Walt Disney's favorite sequence ever animated for his movies. Just it's I went to, I think it was the Met. Yeah, the Met Museum in Central Park in New York. They had a Walt Disney animation exhibit, and one of the things that they showcased was the original. It was like 50 frames from that Cinderella transformation, and they explained like why this was such a big deal for Walt Disney. And I thought that's something that's always stuck with me. Is just like something so simple as a transformation could be something so magical, even to the likes of animation kings like this guy.
Right.
So
And like that's I think that like that's because moments like that, like they're like really pushing to see what they can do. And yeah, like there's many times that like I'll watch something from back in those days, like from the 30s, 40s, 50s, 70s, that they'll do something that like really baffles me, like how did they do that, because they didn't have CG back then.
right,
So
they had to get really creative.
they had to get really creative.
They did stuff.
And I know like this is a little bit of digressing, but like I mean this is all really to culminate like how amazing it is that Shrek did what it did with the amount of power it had back then, the limited power that they had back then. But like Star Wars and like the like blaster fires and like the things that they had to do with that, like how to get that effect and stuff. And so
Yeah,
like
visualized.
we grow up watching a lot of these things, Disney movies, Star Wars, Shrek, but we don't realize like how a lot of these movies like push the envelope on stuff. And I can imagine, like, I mean, creating an animation is like tough, but like I can imagine like back then with the less power that they had, that like they really had to like push as much as they could. And like, I mean, it worked out in their favor, because this is like by far the best like Shrek movie. And I'm not saying like Shrek universe movie, I'm gonna say Shrek movie, because like
Yeah,
you know,
this
I
is
will
just such a
argue to
strong
say
film.
The Last Wish is the best Shrek universe movie.
Yeah, I will agree to that. I will definitely agree to that. Before we leave, we haven't talked about the fairy godmother and her relation to King Harold,
Her
and
relation
like
to King Harold and Prince Charming, and like really like what unfolds in this movie.
yeah. So one thing that we find out somewhere in the midpoint of the movie, when King Harold is doing everything in his power to like get rid of Shrek, we find out that the fairy godmother has a deal with King Harold that was enacted many many years ago, stating, I will make you king or whatever if my son eventually marries your daughter.
Yeah.
That promise is broken when Shrek eventually marries that. So she's threatening to reverse and renege on her end of the promise as well, which means that he's going to return not to just a lowly human, but to a frog. And throughout the movie, there's like little hints and gestures that, there's something, different about their relationship. And yeah, it's because he's the frog. He's basically it's the princess and the frog, basically.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I thought that was funny. We find out the whole reason that she's trying to do this is because her son is Prince Charming, and she wants to, she babies him pretty much. Like she wants him to like have the world, and so she wants him to have this kingdom. I like that. There's that one scene where the fairy godmother pulls King Harold into like into that carriage, and they pass by like the medieval like fat boy or friar boy,
Oh yeah, it was like
and
Fat Boy,
so
Fry
and so
Boy. Yeah, that's what it was.
and so like it's like a fast food. She's like, oh, do you want the curly fries? No, no, I can get anything. And like Prince Charming gets like the kids meal.
Yes, I like that it comes with a full like two-handed battle axe.
Dude, seriously. That was
Uh,
hilarious. Yeah. The film is pretty much like the push and pull of the fairy godmother trying to set up her child, her son, to become king, and then there's the whole narrative that Shrek is also trying to fight not being good enough, not being the one that Fiona wanted to marry.
and there's a fantastic moment actually. I mean, this movie's full of them, but there's a fantastic moment where they riff off of. So what's great about Shrek is that they take these concepts, these stories, and then they turn them on their head,
Yeah.
and they kind of show you what can happen if the opposite is true. So there's the moment where Shrek is being kept in the bedroom by the fairy godmother, and all the furniture starts like waking up, kind of like in Beauty and the Beast. But in Beauty and the Beast, that was a moment where they were trying to, the furniture was trying to like prop up the beast. It was like, you got this. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you don't do this, then we'll all be stuck as furniture forever or whatever. So it was like a positive moment. But in this movie, the furniture was like blocking him from leaving the room. It was like trapping him there and basically telling him he wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
And I thought that was super cool. It was just different.
Yeah. And so I liked that, and we've talked about it, like how they take these elements from other movies. It's so easy for a movie to like take an element or like the entirety of like a whole other movie and make it feel like a ripoff. But nothing about the Shrek movies, at least 1 and 2, feels like a ripoff. Like that they're taking these elements from the other movies. They're not shying away from it, but they're trying to put their own little spin on it, and it works very well.
It's a very unique stamp that they place on the fairy tale genre.
And they become known for doing stuff like that. What do you feel about Donkey and Dragon's Children?
Oh, we can't. That's definitely the elephant in the room. I try not to think too hard about it. It's just, they loved each other very much, and that's what happens.
They
Like
little
babies are
donkey
born. Little.
dragons.
It's if you think about it too much, it's like grotesque and horrible, but it's also very funny.
We don't dig
And
too deep into that.
no, we don't. But Donkey loves him some strong women, I guess. I guess you could say. Strong, fiery woman. Yeah, I thought that was really funny. And I think Shrek the Third dives into that a little bit more. If I remember. I know that the donkey children are in that one, but yeah, I just don't remember the movie at all.
That one. It's been so long. The first Shrek and the second Shrek, I had seen them so many times, so I was able to like remember for the most part like most of those films. Maybe like a little minor detail here and there that I might have forgotten. But I only saw the third one like once, and like I said, like I forgot most of that. Like pretty much. Like I think you're right about the donkey dragon children, but
yeah. Guys, thank you for listening to us here for our 99th episode. Next week we have something very special. We're going to be breaking our next 4 episodes into, or at least we're going to try to do them 4 episodes, back to back to back. If we have to break it up with another movie or whatever, somewhere in the middle of that series, we'll do it. But we're going to try to do 4 episodes of The Rings of Power. For the first episode, we're going to cover the first 4 episodes of Season 1. The second episode, we're going to cover the last 4 episodes of Season 1. And we're going to do the same for the second season, the first 4 episodes and the last 4 episodes. So we're going to break this into 4 episodes of Project Geekology so that we can really dig into the vibes of the Rings of Power. Anthony, before we go, what are you looking forward to with the Rings of Power? And what is your, how much of that have you watched, or how much do you need to rewatch, and so on?
So I had watched maybe partially of the first season, but I'm definitely gonna hop back and rewatch like the entirety of the first season, like as we go through these episodes. So I'm gonna watch the first 4 episodes and then we'll cover that. I don't want to like oversaturate myself before we discuss, because we know how like deep the Lord of the Rings can be. I mean, we did like that whole series and we broke those up. So what I'm looking forward to is like giving it another chance. There's a reason like it didn't fully grab me the first time, and like maybe it was because I didn't give it enough like of a watch. And and that happens. There's been a couple times where I've had to, like, I'll start watching something, it didn't grab me right away, I go back to watch it, and then it ends up being something that I really really like. So I mean, there's a reason why this show got a second season. So hopefully, I mean, outside of the money, but I'm really hoping that I end up liking it more than I did like that the first time around.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I think I only watched 4 or 5 episodes of the first season, and it wasn't that it wasn't good, it just wasn't great for me. Like there was moments of like really fantastic stuff in it. I liked the musical cues a lot of the time. I liked the mystery. Even though some of that has now been spoiled for me, just being on social media. But we're going to try to not spoil things that haven't happened yet in these episodes. And we might even have a special guest because, someone is really trying to join us on our podcast, and we're gonna have a good time with that. So it'll be fun.
Yes, you hear that? We may be having a special guest. We like to have guests on our podcast. We like to have that extra perspective. Sometimes there's things that Dakota or I won't pick up that the other does, and so having that extra perspective will probably expand that even more, especially with something that is really lore intensive like something in the Lord of the Rings universe, which actually, before we cut this off, we do have War of the Rohirrim coming out next month that I would love to be able to like cover.
Oh, yeah, I totally forgot about that. Do you
So,
know when that's coming out?
ooh, I want to say like December 7th or something in the beginning of December,
What is
December
this?
13th. So I was like 6 days off. But yeah, close enough. Yeah, beginning of December.
Cool. All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for listening to us here for our 99th episode. Next week, we start our Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power discussion. Maybe we'll cap that off with a War of the Rohirrim episode, but we shall see how that goes. If you'd like to check out any of our socials, you can find all that in the show notes down below. Please be sure to give this episode. Wait, how many stars, Anthony?
We want 5 stars, but we don't only want them to be 5 stars. We want them to be juicy 5 stars.
Right. Yes, like a rare steak, Gotta be
Absolutely.
juicy. Guys, thank you. We will see you next week or hear you next week or you will hear us next week. I don't even know the terminology there. But thanks so much. Have a good one.
Bye, y'all.